Hello, this is Danny Raymond, the voice behind Ray's Guide. Last week, CIG announced that they would be acquiring Turbulent Studios. The news kind of hit like when those friends who have been dating for years and everybody knows they are great together suddenly say that they've got married over the weekend, and you say, hey, great, well, congratulations. Because you know you were supposed to be excited for them, but it was just so unsurprising and actually seemed to change very little. But just because it was unsurprising doesn't mean that it is insignificant or that there isn't an interesting reason behind why it happened. So I'm going to try to analyze a little deeper into the reasons behind this merger that were missed in the immediate reactions of others. Part 1. Some background.
Well, my name is Benoit Beauséjour. I'm the CTO of Turbulent, a company that takes care of web platform, game services, and we actually make content in the game now. I oversee about 200 people technologically.
Turbulent is a Canadian development house that CIG turned to in 2013 when it became clear that the crowdfunding effort was being hyper-successful and they needed to get out of the fees, restrictions, etc. of Kickstarter.
So the entire relationship started with a really small project that I've dubbed literally Fix the Website, which was, and so we started this, I think it was end of November 2012, right?
And that was the division of labor for some time. It was web-based, it was Turbulent, it was the game itself, it was CIG's. And that included many web-adjacent things like the Hangar module, launcher, Spectrum, issue console, web-based star map, leaderboard, etc. Part 2. The big change. A few years ago, CIG started taking huge parts of their internal staff, from the director level on down, and saying that they were to be exclusively focused on Squadron 42. This hopefully will show some fruit this CitizenCon, but it represented a dilemma. CIG still needed content-rich new patches to keep the fan base interested and growing, but much of the staff needed for that wasn't available, and you couldn't even hire new folks because the management tree that they would be normally reporting to was ordered to be exclusively Squadron 42. But Turbulent, being a separate company, could get around that restriction.
We can do it, right? And so we started as, we would take any kind of gig.
So, seeing a mutual opportunity, Turbulent stepped forward. So we saw Montreal Game Studios set up, initially doing all the hospitals and major landing zones, but moving on to the abandoned outposts, wrecks, a whole range of other things.
Now we're adding to that group other disciplines that can help them make better content.
I was going to say it's more than just a locations team.
Correct.
You've got there's a tools team.
That's right.
There's a locations team. There's
character team. Yes, exactly. And gameplay developers are also in the mix. Obviously, design team is working all together. But I like to see it as a unit because the idea has always been in the approach that Guillaume, that you've met in other shows, has always proposed for the team is a multidiscipline team that has all the facilities to build what they need to build.
Like a microcosm of the whole
exactly.
thing.
That takes time to get all these people on board. But it's really cool because now you can see the output is steady. The team is happy as well. We're rolling.
Also, a ship team, which is
that's brand new. Yeah,
brand new. Still, it's still in its nascent stage.
Yeah.
Currently, there are Turbulent Montreal teams for pretty much all of the game design disciplines needed for the persistent universe: network, gameplay, modeling, environments, tools, characters, ships, mission content team, and so forth. And frankly, during the 3.16, 3.17 branch, there were a lot of releases where the community said, hey, thank heaven for the Montreal studio, for without them, this release would be really empty. And that was an entirely justifiable conclusion. The culmination of all this was when it was announced that Turbulent would be playing a primary role in the creation of persistent ND streaming and server meshing. That raised an eyebrow with me because the kind of programming needed for persistent ND streaming and server meshing and the kind that they had been doing up to that point were entirely different skill sets. But Turbulent was willing to step into the breach and CIG was willing to let them. Part 3. The Cautionary Tale.
Games and everything. We have a history of working with outsourcers.
Now I'm going to segue and talk a moment about another partner firm that CIG worked with. Emphasis on the past tense.
Firesprite.
And that firm was Firesprite. And if you watched the recent Q&A about the new Arena Commander, you might have heard the phrase, the Firesprite time, several times. Firesprite was also a development partner of CIG from the early days, in the case for the Arena Commander, Star Marine, and Theaters War projects. And what happened was that Sony came in with a bunch of money and apparently quite suddenly bought the whole place, leaving CIG in a fire drill situation to stand up, either through another contractor or an internal team, something to replace FireSprite, which they did, at least in part, with help from, you guessed it, Turbulent. We're starting to see some results of that in the new Arena Commander capabilities, so that tale appears to be having a happy ending. But it was not an easy tale, because when you have contracted software development, there are two pools of value. One is the code itself, which you absolutely have rights to as a work for hire, but also the institutional knowledge of how it was built and why it was built that way. You can try to preserve that with good documentation, but it's never as perfect as the actual access to the horse's mouth. Part 4, the darker tale. As Turbulent kept on doing more and more for CIG, and even more importantly, things closer and closer to the essential heart of the project, a scary thought arose.
You're responsible for so much of making Star Citizen possible.
What if someone, let's say hypothetically Microsoft, because they've been on such a big-ticket acquisition binge lately, arrived in Montreal with a barge load of loonies and, for lack of a better word, simply fire-sprited Turbulent clean away? Imagine, for just 1 second, CIG somehow losing much of the institutional knowledge behind persistent entity streaming and server meshing. Calm down, I did say just 1 second. Obviously, that had to be protected against. And in fact, it was some time ago when CIG and Turbulent did a stock swap, so that as a significant stockholder of Turbulent, CIG couldn't be blindsided. And if in fact majority interest in Turbulent was obtained, then CIG would in fact have veto authority, essentially requiring Microsoft to bring a barge load of loonies so large as to buy CIG too. And imagine, for a second, what Microsoft would think of the headline: Microsoft buys responsibility for completing an overly ambitious, behind-schedule Chris Roberts space game. Yeah, major flashbacks happening there, fellas. So, frankly, following the joint exchange of equity positions, the biggest step had in fact already been taken. From there, it was pretty much just having the lawyers and accountants work through all the details. And the whole story reminds me of anything. It is something my grandfather told me when I was young. If you want job security, figure out some way to be indispensable.
I think the reason why this has worked out is because we've become an integral part of the family, right?
It never completely worked for me that way, but in case of Turbulent, it certainly did. My only worry is that now it is officially part of CIG, whether the Turbulent studio will be drawn into the have-to-work exclusively on Squadron 42 realm. I certainly hope not, and I would be definitely reassured if CIG would announce that the Montreal studio will remain for the persistent universe. Now for an update on our giveaways. There's the CitizenCon themed Dream Video Editing Contest for the Elgato Stream Deck XL, an invaluable creator peripheral. See the linked video in the description for my details on that. And then the ship giveaways. First, we have the 10,000 subscriber thank you for the LTI Hull C, the Colossal Cargo Container Carrying Craft, or $100 of Steam Store credit, to be given away when the sea goes live, now scheduled for 3.20, and the big annual IAE Week giveaway for either the Galaxy Complete, the massive modular mining moving medical machine, or that brand new big box bargain bazaar called the Mergerman. Or again, $100 of Steam Store credit. Just be a member and be entered automatically, or subscribe and comment using the secret word. And the secret word for this video is what I imagine Microsoft having a barge load of. Fly safe, keep it real, and I'll see you in the verse. This is Daniel Raymond for Ray's Guide.
In crime here. But that's a turn of phrase. I'll go to Reddit with that. Yeah. But Turbulent has stood out amongst all of our partners. You've been here almost from the very beginning, and you've stuck with the project.